For the first time ever, we are back, by the way. This is the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. For the first time ever, we're going live early. And the only way you would have known about this is if you're in the Noti gang, if you hit that bell. I wanted to test this. We got 83 people in here early because I would imagine a good chunk of them probably hit the notification bell or we're already in your plans for Sunday morning. So appreciate everyone in the chat. We do have a special guest in the chat today for probably the first time this year on a Sunday morning. Big Show Brandon in the chat. What's up, BSB? No one probably realizes now that we've kind of made our full transition over from Twitch officially, I guess unofficially because we're still restreaming over there. But BSB was one of the, I think, probably most important people throughout the summer for sure, just in terms of like actually coming in every day, supporting everyone. What's up, man? It's nice to see you in the chat. Bunch of familiar faces in the chat. We got almost 100 people in here right now, which is just crazy. I don't think I've ever started a stream early before, so maybe we'll start doing this randomly for the Noti game. Appreciate you guys. A couple people in the chat have mentioned it already. Thunderdome, the Thunderdome day. I'm excited. That's why I think I'm ready a little bit early. Peter Leone and I had our chat last night, walked through kind of some initial plans for that team in the Thunderdome on DraftKings. For those of you guys that don't know, $5,300 entry, only 25 people in it. So we're going up in stakes. We had a big win last week. Winning the 1,500 was awesome. So we're gonna run it back this week. So hopefully you guys are cool with that. Be sure and join us for that live sweat 6:30 p.m. Eastern time on the Line Movement YouTube channel. So we'll see if my little notification things start to work as we progress through it. How's everyone feeling about week 5? I kind of wanted to just get in here and hang out a little bit because it can get chaotic. Like there's been times where we've made it like over 500 people within like the first 15 minutes. So I figured like I'd hang out with you guys, everyone that's been in here. Honestly, like I thought I would be early. I get in here and I already see the chat is flowing. I love that, guys. Who was the first person I saw in here? It was King. He says, we are here. Love it, man. What's up, King? Nice to see you back with us. Hey, Edmund, how are you, man? Flash. Oh, Flash is always here. He said it's morning, time to grind. Hey, man, it's been morning. It's been time to grind. We're on coffee, number 3 at this point? That's why I figured we'd get an early start, guys. Got to keep you guessing. I got to incentivize you to hit that bell. You know what I mean? We might actually, for the first time, hit 50 likes or so before the stream's supposed to even start. Good stuff. Rope Dog in the chat. What's up, man? He says he never liked going and waiting in the ER. Honestly, don't mind coming. Oh, wow, man. Are you comparing waiting in the ER to waiting for my stream to start on Sunday mornings? What a world, man. You said you don't mind waiting in here. And the reason you probably don't mind waiting in here, man, is we got the community. Everyone's in here talking before I even jump on, man. It's good stuff. What's up, John? How's it going? We will get to Kyle Allen, my friend. We have time. That is the good news. 4,100 on DraftKings. Obviously, I think he's stone min on FanDuel, like 6K. We'll get there. Mikey boy, what's going on, man? He's more on the high price quarterback with some wide receiver value today. Interesting. Jason L in the chat. A couple other questions. I should probably, you know what, guys? As prepared as I am, I need to figure out how to pronounce this guy's name on Atlanta. Because he's a big part of today for sure. I'm literally Googling this as we speak. Zacchaeus. Is that right? Olamide Zacchaeus. Is that how you say it? I feel like this is one that I can't just continually get wrong throughout the entire day or people are not going to be happy with me. All right. I literally, I opened up Notepad. Olamide Zacchaeus. That's actually not that bad. What's up, guys? Anyone just trickling through? We are early today for the Noti gang. So anyone that hit that notification bell and saw it on their phone, wait, hey, whoa. Joe's early today. Yeah, it's week 5, man. We're ready. Mikey boy's debating between Mahomes and Lamar. I had that same conversation with myself last night, this morning, still building teams, all that stuff. What's up, PJ? Todd Allen in the chat, full 8 seconds, Sirius 6. Obviously, big show. What's up, BSB? I'm still so pumped you're here. Marcus Allen, Kevin John, Matthew G. Couple Johns in the chat. What's up, Donald Leaper? Late Night Darren, Todd Allen. Showtime, baby. Yeah, showtime. Early showtime. Guys, I'm here earlier than you guys realize, doing like a bunch of setup and stuff like that. So I see you guys in the chat. I see Jeff in the chat. I see Zach Thebar in the chat. Zach Thebar is a staple in our YouTube comments. And one thing I'll say about you, Zach, you're not scared to bring fire at me. And I love that, actually. Challenge me. Like, let's continue to like get through this thing together. Zach is not scared to tell me when I'm wrong. And trust me, I'm wrong a lot. Anyone that comes on here, whether it's YouTube or you're reading some sort of article and they're not willing to tell you that they're wrong a good amount, those are not someone, in my opinion, that you should be listening to. Because they wouldn't be doing content and kind of doing this whole thing, and if they were getting everything right, they'd be on a beach somewhere, right? You got a printing press on your hands. Hitting golf balls as I listen to you. That sounds amazing. That sounds amazing, Abelo. Welcome in, man. We got Ramos in the chat. What's up, Ramos? Anyone that hasn't already, be sure and check out Matt's work over at Line Movement. He's been doing some awesome stuff with us with golf. Obviously, he's been kind of heading up this bets against the spread contest we have between me and some of my writers and all that stuff. So what's up, Ramos? How's it going, bro? Who else we got in here? Mr. Mike's daddy. He goes, I'm in here. Best of luck to you and everyone else today. Yeah, best of luck to everyone else, but especially my Noti gang that was here early. Good stuff, man. This is the Daniel Jones week, Tommy says. Maybe. He's going to be popular. We'll get there for sure. A Bizzle in the chat. What's up, A Bizzle? Chris Hinshaw. What's up, Chris? How's it going, man? Sal Perez, Todd Allen. We got our first Nightbot appearance. They're working. Nightbot's in here to remind you guys to toss a like on this video so that more people throughout the morning. There's tons of people, honestly, that are just on YouTube trying to find good fantasy football content, whatever it is. You toss a like on this video, maybe they find us. Maybe they're suggested to our video, to our live stream, and they come join our community, right? That's the goal. That's why we're on YouTube instead of just being on Twitch like before. We still have 13 people over there just hanging out on Twitch. Come join us. Come join the chat on YouTube, Periscope, all you guys. The community is on YouTube. We got a couple subscriptions already too. What's up, Rizor? Thanks for being with us, man. If you're in the chat, let us know how you found the channel, man. I'm always curious. Jenna in the chat, one of the few women that probably watches these, so appreciate you, Jenna. Says, good morning. Went to Live Movement site earlier, really liked it. Wondering if playing Kittle and Kelsey in the same lineup in GPPs is a good strategy. Hey, first off, Jenna, thanks for visiting linemovement.com, man. A lot of people put a ton of work into that since we launched this year. Jordan, obviously, our media director, I don't know if he's listening right now. He's going to probably be getting ready for our Line Movement show, which he produces every Sunday. So shout out Jordan, shout out Nick. Nick's been doing a ton of design work for us. He's our creative director. So everything you're seeing that looks really good is all Nick Conklin. Everything you're seeing that sounds really good as you're reading was probably all Jordan. Anything you see that probably looks really good in terms of all the stuff that like you're looking at behind us, that's all Jordan too. So we got a good team, that's for sure. We got Nick in the chat. What's up, Nick? How's it going, man? I know Nick knows Jordan from way back. Law Dog Jr. have Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Should you start Josh Allen and risk them not playing? I'd be shocked if that game is played, man. And I don't know why you'd be playing Josh Allen over Lamar Jackson anyway. We'll get there. Chris Clark. Let's get some likes, people. What's up, Clark? How's it going, man? Oh, my gosh. BSB, I forgot you're the natural contrarian, man. He goes, it's Big Ben week plus Deontay Johnson. Thank me tomorrow. I might have to look a little deeper into that one, man. If you guys don't know, BSB is like very, very contrarian, but also like a successful DFS player just by playing that way. Like he plays a lot of NHL DFS, so that's kind of how he found our community initially, I believe. Maybe it was for Manny, I'm not sure. Big Ben week, really? We'll have to look at that. We got 200 people here early. Are you guys tired today? Are you guys just ready to go? It's week 5. We got tons to look at. Lighton Priest found the channel through Smiz. Linton, sorry. Linton, you know how you probably found the channel? It was probably because I was suggested video to you. And the way that happens, likes, comments, all that kind of stuff. So awesome, man. Thanks for coming over. Thanks for being here. Zach is wondering how my lineup construction would differ in a 5,300 GPP versus a 2,200 GPP. Each chalk more or less people. Zach, my answer is always the same question to this, man. The dollar amount does not matter of a tournament. So like when we're talking about the Thunderdome and all that stuff, it's a $5,300 entry. But what's really important is that it's a 25-person tournament. That's what really matters, man. So any type of question that you have like that, ask me how I feel with a small tournament under 100 people versus like 1,000 people versus 15,000 people versus something like the Millionaire Maker where it's 200,000 people? You know what I mean? That's the real question. But we'll get into that for sure. PDX found you guys after winning the 50K. Hey man, it's only week 5. Plenty of time for us to give some of that back. I'm sure we'll do our best today to do the same thing. Justin, what's up, man? How's it going, Justin Rao? Vincent, Sunday mornings are great, guys. Sunday mornings are great. James Jennings, another cage match with Smiz. I'm working on Smiz. Smiz is booked up with all these studs, man. Smiz doesn't have time for me. No, I did the cage match last year and won it. So shout out Smiz for letting me go on it, number 1. But number 2, I think he wants his rematch at some point. I can't remember exactly what we did, if we gave away some money to charity for the winner, or if it was gifted subs on Twitch. It was something like that. We'll have to figure something out now that I'm not kind of focusing on Twitch as much. Nick says small tournaments are much better for your mental health. Yeah, you don't get absolutely buried by like the random play. I guess not the random play. That's not the best word. I'll say you won't get buried by some like not as thoughtfully constructed teams more often than not. You're going to, I mean, if you got 200,000 people, someone's going to fall into the nuts. You know what I mean? John, we will talk about Bridgewater at some point. I promise you that. Chase Claypool, 76% of snaps in week 3. First glance, this result of Deontay's concussion. Yeah, now I got to look a little bit more into that Pittsburgh game, guys, for sure. Holka the GOAT, the first person that's ever said that before, but I appreciate you, man. Thanks for being here. I'll add to the contrarian takes. PJ's, yeah, PJ, you know what? I haven't given you enough credit. I know you've been coming in here, dropping in some contrarian takes as well. Appreciate you, man. A slate breaker. Loved all the content this week from Dan Masterson. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, if you guys haven't checked out the videos, obviously, like, I think I do like, I don't know, 8 or 9 throughout the week on the channel on Mondays and Wednesdays. That's when we go live, 3 p.m. Eastern time, but also you guys are here. Normally, it's 9:30 a.m. Today, we started a little bit early, so anyone that hit that notification bell at some point got a notification on their phone like, hey, Joe's online early today. He's live. Let's start talking some football, right? It's time. Chris said, what happened with Twitch? That's a conversation for another day, man. Nothing happened. YouTube's just a better way for more people to find us. So that's the main idea. What do I think about Le'Veon Bell? We'll get there, man. We will get there. We have time, guys. We have tons of time. It is 8:31, so now we're getting kind of our normal crew through here. So if anyone is here for the first time, welcome in. We'll be walking through the entire DFS slate, each position. We'll also take some time for some Q&A at the end. We'll do some polls along the way also. We'll do some polls. I think the polls are fun. I want to figure out that. Speaking of Twitch, by the way, Twitch has like a lot of stuff where you can like seamlessly do polls. I haven't found one on YouTube that I like yet. Been doing some tests. I haven't found one that I'd want to bring to a live stream yet. So hopefully next week I can kind of try out some other ones. In terms of like a poll that would actually go on the screen, you guys vote in the chat, it goes up, we have exact results. That could happen. Gibson at 5K. I like Gibson a little bit. If you're looking for a contrarian play, there are 4 very key running back plays, guys, for sure. We'll get there. Some news and notes before we get rolling here. Obviously, the Schefter bombs come in last night. Brashad Perriman not expected to play. Not a ton of fantasy impact there. Looks like Mostert and Deebo Samuel, they should be good to go. It looks like they're looking like they're going to play. We'll see what happens with this Titans game. Obviously, if anyone's in here from a season-long perspective, I would be making other plans. I know there's some good commissioners out there that kind of will let you, I guess, start someone in quotations if this game doesn't end up happening. So check with your commissioner in terms of that. It's tough overall, guys. We got to make it work. Just happy that we have some football today overall, right? So we'll get there. Not a ton of really news and notes last night in general. Shout out Steve Boyton, by the way. He always sends me these the night before. Steve Boyton obviously has been doing some content for us at Line Movement as well, so be sure and check him out. He's doing a ton of baseball stuff too, which I love. So here's the thing. The Schefter bombs last night. Lamar and Andrews expected to play. Mixon expected to play. Julio is the one that's kind of definitely interesting. Straight game time decision. So a lot of implications in that game, which we'll get to. Perriman, like I said, not expected to play. Ruggs expected to play. I think the Ruggs one is really interesting if you're looking for a bring back in that KC game, which we'll get to. And then we talked about Deebo and Mostert. That's pretty much it. Outside of there's a couple games today. It looks like there's going to be some rain. I'll say this, and I'm sure I'll have to say it at least 1 or 2 more times throughout the morning. I don't care about rain. I don't care about weather. I care about wind. So once wind gets to like that 12 mile per hour range, that's when it starts affecting fantasy a little bit more. So if someone could keep an eye on wind across these games as we're live, if anything's like coming through and you guys are nervous about something with that, we can talk through it again for some, I guess it's case by case in some ways. I think it affects some guys more than others. Obviously, these guys trying to get down the field, it's going to affect them a little bit more, but we'll get there. So, guys, today is a special day. I know a couple people in the chat already know this, but here's the thing. I think the point of this entire thing is to make sure that we keep you guys in the loop with everything that's happening with some of the other content out there. One of the things that is really fun today that we're doing, the Tilt Space. We do this every week at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Myself, Peter Overzet, Michael Leone. But today is a special day. We're playing the Thunderdome on DraftKings. So the $5,300 entry, if anyone joined us last week at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, you'll know that we had a big week. We won the $1,500 for $50K, which was a lot of fun. Obviously, both these guys, very good players. Peter doesn't get enough credit. I'll say that for how sharp he is. You guys know Leone from Established the Run, but join us at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be going through that entire thing. That show is one of the most fun shows I do every week. So Line Movement channel is where you'll find that one. So just search Line Movement on YouTube. At some point, you guys will see a link coming in the chat and join us over there. Be a lot of fun. So let's do this, guys. In the spirit of getting this thing kind of rolling and going through the positions, I know we got on early today. So if you were here early, appreciate you. If you haven't already, I would love it if you guys would consider hitting that like button, maybe subscribing to the channel if you think you see some value throughout today. Again, Mondays, Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 9:30 Eastern Time on Sundays when we get rolling. So the other piece of, I guess, value that we can provide you guys is linemovement.com, resources tab, NFL data table. So this is what we're doing this is something that I used to make available to all my Twitch subscribers. Each position, what I think really matters overall. So we'll kind of walk through this a little bit on stream today, obviously, but I always want to show you guys this. Free resource, guys. We got ownership projections in here. We have things like average intended air yards, like next gen stats. It's all brought together in one spot. So you really want to focus on a lot of things in DFS, sure, but there's a lot of things that actually don't matter a ton. So we'll walk through that, but also just really focusing on some of these things on this data table. This is where I'm building my lineups, and we'll have an update for this page very soon. Also, I'll be doing a video for this to kind of walk through what some of these advanced stats do. But we wanted to get something out to you guys early. Obviously, a lot of stuff going on as we launched linemovement.com. But let's talk quarterback, guys. So I think that at the top end, the big decision, I guess we already heard in chat a couple of times, is Lamar Jackson versus Patrick Mahomes. Both of these guys, at least right now, looking like they could be sub 10% ownership. So I like that quite a bit. I think that Mahomes just hasn't really had that explosion game yet. This spot against Vegas, I think, is a very strong one. We know that team total is something that correlates directly to touchdowns, and at quarterback, it is one of the most important things to look at. So this team total column, 33.5 points at blitzbet.eu right now for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. So I do like that spot quite a bit. I think Mahomes, I'm more trying to figure out what his ownership's going to be at the high stakes. We've been spending a little bit more time on thinking through that sort of thing for the Tilt Space show, but I do like Mahomes quite a bit. At Lamar, I think if you're scared off of that injury scare, I guess, that he had earlier in the week, I guess it would make some sense if you don't think he's going to use his legs as much in this spot against Cincinnati. But guys, he's shredded this team before for 30 plus fantasy points. So that's the thing. If you want to pay up for a guy like Lamar, I think it's totally fine. I think he's the guy that I prefer to Dak, and I don't know if that's a situation where a lot of people, I guess, feel the same. Dak's just going out there throwing like 500 yards on the regular recently. This Giants game, my biggest concern is that they aren't able to really keep up with Dallas overall. And we've seen it. Dallas has been playing from behind so much, guys, that they've been forced to throw as much as they have been. So my concern is that if there's no fight on the other side of this game, we'll talk about Danny Dimes in a second, or even if there's just limited fight on the other side of this game, what does that mean for Dak and some of these expensive weapons like Amari, even just Gallup, Lamb, these pass catchers? I still think that Zeke is the guy that I want in this game. I think that's pretty clear. We'll talk about running back shortly, obviously, but I think there's 4 very clear best running back plays. So I guess there's going to be a little bit of, can I pick the 3 best ones in my lineup? Hopefully we can spread shares a little bit depending on how many lineups you're playing. But we'll talk through that. I think Dak is fine. At 7,400, he doesn't offer, I don't think, the floor that some of these other guys rushing do. But we've seen it time and time again. If you're playing Dak, I know someone mentioned in the chat earlier, if you're playing Dak, maybe you just try and jam in as many of these weapons as possible, and you hope that Danny Dimes on the other side can really, I guess, keep up. Maybe you got a slate and bring back or something on the other side of this, I think is interesting. I think where a lot of guys at kind of the mid to high stakes are going to go this week, I think it's Deshaun Watson. I think he's 6,900, and people are going to see this price tag. More often than not, we'll see, I guess over the last couple years, we'll see guys like Watson be really popular, fail, and then the next week, everyone's off. But recently, like, people are getting a little bit smarter. Like, you can kind of look into the data a little bit. Like, you still obviously get the rushing upside from Deshaun Watson. This Jacksonville matchup is a good one, but I'll say one thing about it. I think they definitely will kind of play at a slower pace in a perfect world. So I do like Deshaun Watson. I like Deshaun Watson stacks in particular in tournaments. I don't think that everyone wants to talk about Bill O'Brien. I don't think that changes a ton, guys. I really don't. I think that there's still a team that has some very good weapons. I think on the other side of this game, like Jacksonville has been giving up a ton of production. So I think it's fine. I think Deshaun Watson at 6,900 is just like slightly underpriced. Like in that price range, sure, I'm probably doing everything I can to get up to Patrick Mahomes or Lamar, but I'm interested a little bit that BSB in the chat was talking about Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh at super low ownership. That's an interesting one. I was definitely on the Pittsburgh defense side of that one. Maybe Zach Ertz on the other side, which we'll get to. But I rarely play these guys that don't give us anything on the ground. If you guys have been watching my content for any extended period of time, I really focus on these guys that can give us a rushing floor. Also that ceiling. We'll see these guys like Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, just give us, Josh Allen, a different tier of ceiling just because they can add so much there as well. Daniel Jones, 5,400. That's what everyone wants to talk about. So let's do this. We haven't done a poll yet today. Let's say the quarterback price considered, who is the best play in week 5? So we're going to do this. Put a 1 in the chat if you think Dak Prescott is the best play on the slate. Price considered at quarterback. Put a 2 in the chat if you think Daniel Jones in the same game is the best play on the slate. 3 in the chat for Deshaun Watson, who we just talked about. And 4 in the chat if you like Lamar or Mahomes. We're taking into consideration price here. So let's keep it with those 4 for now. So 1 in the chat if you think Dak Prescott is the best quarterback on the slate, price considered. 2 in the chat if you think Daniel Jones in the same game at 5,400 is the best price best play on the slate. Deshaun Watson, 6,900. Put a 3 in the chat. Lamar or Mahomes, put a 4 in the chat. And if you don't like either of those guys, put a 5 in the chat and tell me who you're on. Best play on DraftKings at quarterback. Price considered. I love this, guys. Bunch of people voting in the chat. Appreciate you guys, seriously. A couple new subscribers, too, that I want to make sure that I shout out here. Steven LeBlanc. We got Ken and Noach in the chat with the subscription. Appreciate you, man. If you're here for the first time, welcome in. Welcome in. What else we got going on in here? We got a bunch of 4s in the chat. All right. Okay. Bunch of Lamar and Mahomes people today. Couple Dak people in there. We got Zach Thebars. He's a 3. He's on Watson today. That's sharp, man. That's sharp. I think Deshaun Watson's sharp. Bunch of 3s in the chat, actually. Carlos Soto's got a 3 in the chat. Rope Dog's got a 3 in the chat. Any 5s in here? Oh, we got a Kyle Allen person in the chat. Love it. Infected Army on Kyle Allen at $4,100. $4,100 Kyle Allen. He's got a superstar team around that guy. We got a Minshew person in the chat. Interesting. Interesting. James Young says 4. Turn your brains on. Love it, man. What's up, Jason? How's it going? Kyle Allen, 4K. A couple Kyle Allen people in here. We got some Jimmy G love. Ooh, Bridgewater. That's a good one. We'll talk about Bridgewater in a second. Jason says great content. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate you being here. Donald Lepper, a lot of 4s in the chat. I see your vote, brother. It only counts once. All right, we're actually a little bit more spread out than I thought. That's interesting. I don't know if we'll be as spread out at running back, which we'll get to. What's up, DP? How's it going, man? Ooh, a Kyler person in the chat. Vincent, that's sharp, man. I think Kyler's actually really sharp in tournaments. I like Kyler a lot. I think DeAndre Hopkins might be one of the best plays on the slate in terms of like leveraging the field in tournaments. I know Leone is really big on Hopkins this week in tournaments. All right, interesting. So let's talk about Danny Dimes for a second before we move on. Danny Dimes, 5,400 in this game that we expect there to be a ton of points. The thing that I love about it, and what we'll show on this data table every week, 32nd in the league at defending the deep pass. This Dallas team does not defend the deep ball very well. So who does that benefit? Who does that benefit? Let me know in the chat. Who does Danny Dimes like to throw deep to? Who's in like the 4K range at wide receiver? I'll make it really easy. Who you pairing Daniel Jones with today if Dallas can be beat deep? Let's hear it. Let's hear it in the chat. I'm not even going to move on until I at least see the name. I think it's an interesting conversation to have at 5,400 because he is so much cheaper than a guy like Deshaun Watson. It's kind of a weird zone, I suppose, if you are willing to go to Kyle Allen. Yeah, we got the Slaytons in the chat. You guys are too sharp. I do like Slayton a lot today, and that's part of the reason. That's part of the reason. If I'm playing Danny Dimes, I'm probably playing Slayton with him. If I'm playing Dak stacks, I think that Slayton's probably the bring back that I prefer. So I'm with you on that. You guys are too sharp. We got Vincent saying Golden Tate, though. Maybe. Yeah, if Golden Tate catches a deep ball today, that's not going to be great for my teams. Guys, we got 38 people on Twitch. Come join us over on YouTube. That's where all the conversation's happening. So if you're talking in the chat on Twitch and I don't see it, apologies. But come join us on YouTube. Super easy to find us. Slayton. All right. So let's talk about Kyle Allen. Since everyone wants to know, can I play this guy at 4,100? And my answer is, what type of tournament are you in? If you're playing cash games, then yeah, I think you can build a pretty good team around Kyle Allen. Is he necessary? We probably need to go to full screen for this. Is he necessary? Kyle Allen at 4,100. We don't normally get guys like this, for the record. Like a clear tier below all these other guys in terms of price. In a relatively decent matchup. I've gone back and forth on this for days, honestly. I'm trying to figure out if I need Kyle Allen. And my official, I guess, stance after building a bunch of lineups this morning and last night is I don't think he's completely necessary. I think there's enough value at other positions to make it work. I think there's some decent plays at wide receiver that are a little bit cheaper if you want to kind of go there. In a week where I thought pricing was really tight, maybe there's a week where we have Christian McCaffrey to play. Then maybe Kyle Allen makes sense. I played Kyle Allen a couple times last year when he was like dirt cheap like this. Kyle Allen, the reality is, doesn't give us a ton on the ground. This Washington team is implied for under 20 points, which we know really matters. If you want to go just like, I guess we talked about this a couple weeks ago. If you want to go with like just the cheapest stack possible and just go Kyle Allen to Logan Thomas, I don't think it's the worst thing because around that, you're playing Zeke. You're probably playing Kelsey or Kittle. You're probably getting in some of these other really good running back plays. Maybe you can even pay up for someone like Ridley or Hopkins in those teams. So I get it. I understand it. I understand the play. I think that I would only be considering Kyle Allen if I was playing smaller field tournaments. I think you're out of your mind if you're playing Kyle Allen with multiple pass catchers in like a really large field on DraftKings. Because I just don't think he's necessary, and I don't think he has a really large ceiling overall. That's my main issue with it. So it's not that I think Kyle Allen is a bad player, any of those things. I don't really care about any of that. I care about like what is the context of this slate, this week 5 slate on DraftKings or FanDuel. And to me, I don't think he's super necessary. I think that trying to get up to Danny Dimes makes some sense. Trying to get up to some of these better options that are more expensive, I think this is a week that we can do it overall. So I wanted to make sure that we had a deep conversation, I guess, about that. I think quarterback is really interesting this week. There's tons of times where I'm very like locked into certain types of quarterback plays. I think this week it's a little bit more wide open for me. Benjamin Smith, thanks for your subscription, man. Appreciate that. Appreciate you being with us. Let us know in the chat where you found the channel, man. I would imagine there's going to be some people today that find the channel just from the likes, right? They'll see me suggested on a video they're watching and they'll join us hopefully. So running back. Let's try this first actually today for running back. I think there's 4 very clear best plays. We talked about that from the start. So let's do this. Best running back play on DraftKings. Put a 1 in the chat if you think it's Ezekiel Elliott. Again, we're taking price into consideration here. 1 in the chat for Ezekiel Elliott. 2 in the chat for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. 3 in the chat for Mike Davis. 4 in the chat for Kareem Hunt. 5 in the chat if you think it's someone different. And then let me know in the chat who that is. let's take a pulse before we dive in. We should probably start doing this before we dive into some of the analysis and the data sheet and stuff. So, who is the best running back play on DraftKings? Price considered for Week 5. Ezekiel Elliott, put a 1 in the chat. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, put a 2 in the chat. Mike Davis, put a 3 in the chat. Kareem Hunt, put a 4 in the chat. 5 in the chat if you like someone else, and then let me know who it is. Let's see what we got here. The chat is flowing. Love it. Love it. Man, I appreciate you guys for voting. Like, we got over 600 people in here. Guys, maybe today's the day we break 700 live on stream. How cool would that be? We got over 150 likes. We're 15 minutes in the show, 20 minutes in the show. We talk about that. Like, we talk about, like, honestly, like, I'm going to let some of these votes come in before we kind of look into it a little bit deeper. But I know we talk about it a lot, like, whatever, hit the bell, like the notification gang. Again, if you're here for the first time, I went live 10 minutes early today, didn't tell anyone. The only people that knew were the people that hit that bell because they get it right to their phone. But I'll say this, like, we talk about that. We talk about likes, like commenting, all that stuff really helps. But just being here on a Sunday morning, hanging out with us, hanging out with the community, more than enough, guys, more than enough. And we try and be as transparent as possible. Like, we'll be breaking down that lineup in the 1500 on DraftKings later on today on the Tilt Space. But I review all my own lineups. If you guys have been around for a while, you'll know that I kind of play like the mid to high stakes, like the 1500, like smaller field tournaments is my big focus. But I show all my results, guys. I don't care. Like, no one wins every week. You kidding me? This is why we play, because it's fun. You have a chance to turn a little bit of money into a lot of bit of money. Is that how I would say it? A lot of bit of money. But yeah, you're gonna go through the swings. If you've been watching my content for a year or two, I mean, you're probably very aware if I'm a winning player or not. But that's not even the most important thing. Let's get through this thing together, right? So appreciate everyone being in here. I'll say this, I haven't mentioned it yet, but if you haven't checked out the content throughout the week, again, live 3 p.m. Eastern time, Monday and Wednesdays. We also have a podcast now. Just search the Joe Holka Show. It's pretty easy to find on Apple Podcasts. Toss me a rating and review. That's another way that can really help more people find the show. So let's get back into it, guys. Running back, where are we at in the chat right now? It was a 1 in the chat for Ezekiel Elliott. It was a 2 in the chat for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. 3 in the chat for Mike Davis. 4 for Kareem Hunt. Or if you think someone else's best play, price considered on DraftKings, you're going to let me know with a 5 in that name. Cody Huffman. What's up, Cody? First vote, by the way. He liked Zeke this week with the 1 as the best play on DraftKings. We got a bunch of 1s in here. We got some 2s and 3s. Okay. So we got some Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Mike Davis love in the chat. I'm not seeing a ton of 4s so far. Is he like the clear 4th option of this group? Lord Hines, he likes Kareem Hunt. I think it's interesting. We got any 5s in here yet? TG3. Okay. Interesting. James Robinson is a 5. A couple more 2s coming in also. Sounds like a lot of people on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which makes sense. That makes sense to me. Uthakis Moore says 3 and 4. Maybe that's the play. Just play all these guys. But that's the thing. There's 4 very, very, very good plays on DraftKings this week at running back. You can't play all 4 of them. I wish they could. DraftKings didn't just magically give us another flex spot today, or I would be playing all 4. What else we got on here? A couple 5s. Cameron, let me know who you want, man. Like, you can't just put a 5 in the chat. You got to give people the answers to the test, man. People want to know who you playing outside of these guys. We got a James Robinson, a Josh Jacobs. Interesting. Antonio Gibson. I think that one's sharp, Stuart. Connor for Rope Dog. Always like Rope Dog's perspective. We got Mookie in the chat. He's all over Zeke. Just too sharp. Just too sharp. I do like the Zeke. The Zeke's my favorite play in that game. I talked about that before if anyone's just coming in. Can I pick them all? I wish, DP. I wish, man. Ooh, Mo Start. Actually, guys, remind me at the end. I want to start doing this at the end. We go through each position and talk about what I think are the best plays, all that stuff. But at the end, what's really important about being a winning player on DraftKings is giving yourself a chance in late swap. So if you have some DAC stacks out there and you're really struggling early in the day, maybe there's a lot of stuff that happened that was a little bit higher owned than you thought and you're behind, we got to go through some plays that offer us some leverage. This isn't a great slate for that overall, but I think Mostert's one that's interesting if we're trying to pivot. We'll get there. Cody Huffman, 1 in the chat. More Jacobs people in the chat than I thought. Some Robinson people. Okay. What else we got in here? A girly person in the chat. Show yourself, Ant. David Johnson. Okay, fair enough. Benjamin Smith, my friend showed me you. Awesome, man. Appreciate being with us. Turtle Loman subscribes to the channel. Thanks, man. Appreciate you being with us. Happy Sunday. It's week 5 already. This thing's going to be over before we know it. All right, what else we got in here? I'm just trying to make sure I got a pulse of what we're thinking. A lot of more 5s than I thought, boys. That is crazy to me, because I think these top 4, pretty clearly the best plays on the slate, in my opinion, are at running back this week. So Ezekiel Elliott, we talked about it, 7,800. I think he's about $1,200 underpriced. Nice team total. They are going to be ahead, we would think, in this game script in his favor. Maybe they really lean on Zeke in this one. Just so valuable, the opportunity cost at running back to make sure you're locking in touches, to make sure you're locking in goal line work, all of those things. So I think Ezekiel Elliott at 7,800 is a guy that I'm actively trying to prioritize getting to. I'll say that to make that very clear. I like Mike Davis as the number 2 play on the slate at running back. 6,400. I guess the Christian McCaffrey light, everyone wants to call him. I just think he's too cheap. And if we get CMC back next week, that's great. We'll be figuring out ways to play him. But Mike Davis, 5.3 receptions is our current projection for him right now, about 21 touches at 6,400 in this matchup against Atlanta. We love the pace in this game. This Atlanta team, like, I guess historically, has been very poor at defending running backs in the passing game. Just look at this, guys, and just to give you a little bit of perspective on this data table. Anyone here for the first time, by the way, linemovement.com, resources tab, NFL data table. This is free, what we're looking at right now. This is how I'm building my teams. So Mike Davis against Atlanta. Atlanta, 28th at defending the short area of the field. So who is going to be catching balls in the short area of the field? These pass-catching running backs. So I love Mike Davis today at 6,400. And I don't care a ton about matchup overall, especially at running back. I care about volume. I care about guys that can be successful in any type of game script. I think Mike Davis fits that bill. So let's talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus Kareem Hunt, because that's where my biggest decision comes today. We know that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is probably going to be higher owned than Kareem Hunt. So this is where we talked about last week. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. No, it was last week. Feels like weeks ago. We talked about Joe Mixon on this exact show last week, and we talked about him as a guy that would be a potential pivot off of some of the chalky running back plays. But because we know that Mixon's always a threat to get a lot of volume, like I don't pivot at running back with these guys that I think are going to get 15 or less touches. It's not how I play DFS. Let's do that at wide receiver. Let's take some shots at wide receiver. I'm all about that. But at running back, we really have to focus on these guys we know are going to see volume. So I think Kareem Hunt, if this is right, 12%, I think Kareem Hunt's a fantastic tournament play. And it's not that you can't play Kareem Hunt with any of these guys. Like, you can play Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Mike Davis, and Kareem Hunt. Like, they're all underpriced in this 6K range, in my opinion. But I do really like Kareem Hunt. And it's not a good matchup against Indy. I'll say that. It's a lower team total, all of those things. But we know that there's talent, there's ceiling, there should be opportunity. I'm not worried about a lot of guys like kind of coming in and stealing work from Kareem Hunt. I know that we saw a little bit of that last week. I don't really care about that. I think at 6,500, he's just drastically underpriced. He was like the first guy that stood out, like Jake Seeley. We do our first look every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern time live on this channel. Jake Seeley, the first name that he brought up was Kareem Hunt on the entire slate. So I think he's really sharp. Let's talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, though. It's not that I don't think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a good play. I do. I will have him on teams 100% today. 6,800 in this team total of 33.5 on blitzbet.eu. They're obviously favored by over a touchdown here. We can project him for about 20 touches, probably about 21. I would say the ceiling probably about 24 touches for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We know he can be active in the passing game. They're going to kind of get him in space, that sort of thing. He's been a guy that hasn't been scoring touchdowns. And we talk about guys getting the landscape is totally different at running back, or just in general in DFS than it used to be. People understand that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is underpriced, not because of his volume, not because of the team he plays for, but because he hasn't scored a lot of touchdowns this year. That could happen today, guys. He could get in the end zone multiple times today and ruin all these Mahomes stacks. That could easily happen. I think that he is a guy that you're betting on the offense, you're betting on the talent, you're betting on the volume, and you're betting that he has some touchdown progression coming his way. So that's my official take on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. All 4 of those guys, those are where my teams will start today. What running backs are in your Thunderdome lineup? Andrew, you'll have to check out the Tilt Space at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time on the Line Movement channel if you want to see our running backs. I appreciate you trying to bait me into that one. For the record, though, me, Peter, and Leone haven't built our Thunderdome team yet. We're probably going to do that about an hour before the slate starts. So who else are we talking about at running back, guys? Who else are we talking about? Should we have the David Johnson conversation? 5,200. I think this one's just not for me. Everyone wants to talk about, yeah, this new coaching regime. No more Bill O'Brien. Let's unleash David Johnson. Great. We saw Duke Johnson be involved last week a decent amount. And I'm a David Johnson fan overall. Like, let me make that clear. Like, from Arizona originally, big Cardinals fan, all those things. I just don't think this changes very much for David Johnson overall, just because, like, if anything, Bill O'Brien was like trying to make David Johnson succeed after that trade they made, right? So to me, David Johnson 5,200 maybe gets a price play to get access to this game. I think it's okay. I'm not actively trying to get there at 5,200 when I think there's better plays. I think that if you're rolling out like 150 teams, something like that, like, sure, you're going to want to have some David Johnson like exposure. Like, he's a guy that's going to be owned. 18% is his projected ownership right now. I prefer getting up to Kareem Hunt, most definitely getting up to that range overall. But in that, I guess, in that range of David Johnson, I think there's an argument for Le'Veon Bell, though I don't love it. I prefer Antonio Gibson in this range, guys, especially in tournaments, because, like, if you're telling me that David Johnson is going to be 12% owned or higher, I think I'd rather just play Antonio Gibson at 4% or less. I think he's really sharp. I think he's like, we know this team wants to run all those things. I think that this Rams team can be run on 28th in terms of DVOA against the run. It's a good matchup, 5K. We know he can be active in the passing game, all of those things. So I think Antonio Gibson is one that I've warmed up to a little bit as the week has gone on. He doesn't have the ceiling of any of these other guys in terms of his actual touches, but I think he's okay. I think he's all right. It's not like that I'm going out of my way to play Antonio Gibson or anything like that. I'm just trying to make it clear. I think I prefer him to David Johnson overall. Someone in the chat's asking about James Robinson. I do like Robinson a lot. He's someone that feels like that guy that's never going to be more highly owned than like 10%, like all year, but he's still going to see volume, like 17 touches. He's going to be active in the passing game, all that stuff. Yeah, no, I think James Robinson's fine at 6,700. Is he the pivot off of some of these other guys? Maybe. I still think that if Kareem Hunt's going to be at 12%, I'd just rather play Kareem Hunt, but that's where I'm at. What else we got, guys? We are going to move on to the wide receiver position. I think running back is relatively straightforward, personally. So if I miss anything, let me know. Gibson is the helicopter play this week. Is that true? I love Ian, by the way. Ian and I have met each other in person a couple times. Great human being. So we love the helicopter play around here on the Joe Holka Show. That's awesome. I didn't even know Gibson was this guy. That's funny. Great branding, by the way, from him. Guys, if you are here for the first time, we might break 700 live viewers on stream today. We're at 692. So if you're here for the first time, would love it if you consider subscribing to the channel. Toss a like on this video. I think that's how more people are finding it, personally. So James Wood, thanks for your subscription, man. Bunch of guys coming through. Make sure you join us on the Tilt Space tonight, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Myself, Peter Overzet, Leone. We're going to walk through our Thunderdome team, which will be a lot of fun. Obviously, directly after this, the Line Movement NFL show with Dieter Kirkenbach and Peter Overzet. That's on the Line Movement channel, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Let's talk about wide receiver. And always reminding you guys, this data table, free resource at linemovement.com, NFL data table under the resources tab here. This is what I'm using to build my team. So the first thing that I'm doing at wide receiver, if you guys have followed any of my content, seen any of my videos throughout the week, weighted opportunity rating. Shout out Josh Hermsmeyer, airyards.com, all that good stuff. Weighted opportunity rating, if you've never heard of it before, it's basically a mixture of target share and target market share of air yards. So we're getting guys that are very active in the chat, or very active in the chat. I was literally actually just distracted by this $10 super chat. Deer hunting. I promise I will get to your question directly after I finish this thought. So weighted opportunity rating. This is one of the metrics that I think is the most important by far, because it's going to get these guys that are getting deep targets, but also going to get us a decent amount of volume from their overall team target share, if that makes sense. So you'll see some guys overall that will just look underpriced if you sort by this metric. So one of those guys that just looks underpriced to me is Darius Slayton at 4,800. But we'll get there in a second. I want to make sure I hit this super chat. Appreciate you, man. $10, that's not necessary whatsoever. But thanks for supporting the channel. Should I start Devontae Parker today, or who should I start? Derrick Henry at Buffalo or Josh Jacobs at Kansas City? So let me ask you this, Tyler. Tyler, is your commissioner allowing you to play like a player, quote unquote, in case Derrick Henry doesn't play, or do you have to make that decision right now? If you have to make that decision right now, I don't think you can play a guy like that. So I think that's the stance on it. I think Josh Jacobs at Kansas City is a guy that I've warmed up to a little bit. From a season-long perspective, that's your best option. I think you're in a decent spot. So is the question Jefferson versus Parker? Let me make sure I take a real look at this one for you, since you're gracious enough to toss a super chat. Let's see what we got here. Jefferson versus Parker. I know my initial lean on this one, and let me know if it's PPR or I'm just gonna act like it's a PPR league. But if it's not, let me know. Parker versus Jefferson. I wish this Minnesota game was on the main slate, by the way. I do think that it's shaping up really well for points. So Jefferson versus Parker. This is really close, guys. I think I'd just rather have access to this Minnesota game overall. This Jefferson kid's impressed me. I'll say that. So appreciate you, Tyler. Let me know if you have any other questions. I'll try and get to them. Robbie Anderson. We do like Robbie Anderson quite a bit. So let's talk a little bit more about some guys that are underpriced. Darius Slayton. If you missed it earlier today, we do have a fantastic matchup against Dallas, because Dallas, 32nd in the league at defending the deep ball. We know that Slayton is getting the deeper targets down the field. If it is like one of those days, and people forget, there were some ceiling performances earlier last year from Danny Dimes. He has these good matchups. He can perform. And Darius Slayton at 4,800, I think he'll be higher owned than this at higher stakes. So we're still trying to make that decision if he's a Thunderdome guy for us. But I would imagine he's going to be closer to 18, 20% at higher stakes. At lower stakes, I think if you get him around 11, it's still really solid for a guy like this that has a decent ceiling. At the top, I think that DeAndre Hopkins, if he ends up being lower owned again, because everyone wants to prioritize other positions this week in terms of salary, wide receivers kind of gross overall, in the mid-range. I'll say this is one of the hardest wide receiver weeks I think we've had so far. There's not literally just a home run play at wide receiver this week so far. So I think that one's really interesting. To just pay all the way up for Hopkins as a one-off, a guy that can literally have a ceiling of 40 points on DraftKings. He hasn't even scored a ton of touchdowns this year overall, but the volume that he's seeing, it's I hate to say it, but it's Michael Thomas-esque in some ways, to where his floor is just so safe, in my opinion. Against the Jets, we don't need to talk too much more about that. Yards per route run, this is something that I think is really important at the wide receiver position. Just you'll see some of the best wide receivers be at the top of this. If you take out some of these small samples, obviously. Robbie Anderson, Stephon Diggs, Jamison Crowder in here. That's interesting. Hopkins, McLaurin, those guys, they're running more yards per route. So it means they're getting downfield. It means that they're getting separation, that sort of thing. So I think that's really interesting. At the top, Hopkins, we have to talk about him, of course. Outside of that, guys, let's talk a little bit about these Carolina wide receivers, because I think that's kind of an interesting decision point on this slate. DJ Moore versus Robbie Anderson. So instead of doing a crazy, poll in the chat, let's do this, guys. 1 in the chat for DJ Moore, 2 in the chat for Robbie Anderson, 3 in the chat for another pass catcher for Carolina. Let's see what you guys are on. 1 in the chat for DJ Moore, 2 in the chat for Robbie Anderson, 3 in the chat for another pass catcher for Carolina. I think it's a really interesting decision this week. I think Robbie Anderson's definitely going to be the highest owned wide receiver on the slate. If not, maybe it's one of these other guys that's cheaper if people decide to go down to Olamide Zaccheaus. I knew I was going to butcher that name. I literally have the pronunciation in my face right now on a notepad. Olamide Zaccheaus. All right, some 1s in the chat. We got some DJ Moore love still in here. Okay. Few 2s. So we're very split, actually. This is interesting. I kind of don't know exactly which way to go either. If we're taking into consideration ownership, I do like the DJ Moore call. Everyone wants to talk about that week 4 dud that costs a lot of people, including myself, some lineups for sure. Robbie Anderson, this role is definitely increasing, that sort of thing. I don't know. I just think the wide receiver, there's just not a ton of really good plays. So trying to make sure that a guy like Robbie Anderson, 5,900 is a priority, I think makes sense for sure. We see him playing this DJ Moore role, so I'm mentally trying to get over it that he's only a deep threat. I don't think that's the case. DJ Moore is actually getting more air yards. So I think that's an interesting kind of aspect of overall, kind of this overall. I think both of them are good plays. If you're playing Teddy Bridgewater, who we didn't talk about a ton earlier, you can play both these guys for sure. Scott Seeley says, just play both. All right, fair enough, fair enough. Noah says Samuel. I think Samuel's going to be the lowest owned guy for sure. So I think that makes some sense. Like, I guess you have a little bit of equity if there's a Mike Davis injury that you get more Curtis Samuel touches. I think that makes sense. It's an interesting one. I think it's Robbie for me if I had to like just pick one in a vacuum, but I like the leverage that you might get from DJ Moore in this spot. So who else is there? Well, I guess we could talk about Will Fuller. I think that this is one that I'm trying to, I guess, get through mentally. Obviously, what happened with Cooks last week. But I think this Houston passing game is something I'm super interested in from a tournament perspective. So Will Fuller, he's 6,600. His weighted opportunity rating is at 0.6, still very strong. I mean, this Jacksonville team can be beat more in the short area of the field, 27th in the league, but they're still below average against the deep ball, all of those things. I think that Will Fuller and Deshaun Watson stacks, some of my favorites on the entire slate for sure. I just think that like 6,700, it's a little bit, or 6,600, sorry, I think it's a little bit too expensive for him, but I think it's still something that if you're just getting access to this game in stacks, that's kind of where I'd want to be overall. So I think this is a spot where I want to be overweight on Deshaun Watson, if that makes sense. What are we doing with these Cowboys wide receivers? So we got Amari Cooper at 7,400, Gallup at 54, CeeDee Lamb at 6K. I think that we mentioned it before. I don't think I'll have a ton of Dak stacks overall today. I think this is the week that maybe if people want to just continue to go back to that well in tournaments, because I guess keep winning people tournaments. I understand it, but also I think that this is a Zeke game overall. I think I'm on the Zeke side of this game. And that actually hurts a little bit of the slate and equity in my opinion, but I'd be shocked if Dallas has to go in there and throw 40 times again. So that's kind of where I'm at. Let's talk about some of the cheap guys. So Olamide, Zacchaeus, 3K. I think he is definitely my preferred 3K wide receiver today versus a guy like Jeff Smith. Jeff Smith, I don't think is as talented, smaller team total, that sort of thing. If you're looking for a pivot, I mean, he has the same price. He just literally for the Jets last week saw 9 targets in a game. I think Olamide Zacchaeus is the guy that I would want. We want access to this Atlanta and Carolina game overall, in my opinion. So if we, I guess we'll keep an eye on what's going on with Julio Jones. If Julio is out, I think he's a very, very strong play. And he's a straight game time decision, by the way. So we should know that as we progress through. 9 targets last week, 86 yards on 8 catches. I think he's just someone that super safe, kind of like a underneath type of asset for them. But at 3K, he's just drastically underpriced, in my opinion. He ran 35 routes on 45 of Matt's dropbacks last week. So I think that's the spot where you're playing him just because of his volume, and we very rarely get these guys at Stoneman. Zach Thebar with the $4.99 super chat. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate you, man. Again, like you might think that I get upset sometimes in the comments, but like I love that you like literally just spit fire at me every week, man. And speaking of fire, he goes Christian Kirk week. Heard it here first. I actually really like the Kyler stacks this week in tournaments because I think they're going to be super low owned. We talked about Hopkins, about how if no one's going to prioritize paying up on a really weird week at wide receiver, I like Hopkins a lot. So I like the play, man. I think that's sharp. Appreciate your super chat, man. Seriously, very generous of you. I'm not really on Gage, Vincent. I think that Zacchaeus is like the guy that I would want there. I think Gage, we kind of know what he is at this point. Like he's 5,100, man. I think you just take the discount with Zacchaeus and a similar type of floor probably. I would imagine Gage has a higher ceiling. I'm with you on that. If you're just trying to get a lower owned piece of this game. Yeah, I could see Gage ruining some teams, but it's not like he's cheap. So I think that's the difference. What do we think about Tyreek Hill this week in Kansas City? 6,900 for Tyreek Hill this week. If you're rolling out some home stacks, I think Tyreek Hill is a guy I'm prioritizing. Sammy Watkins at 45 if you want a lower owned piece. Like what's really, like, if we just look at this range, guys, this cheap wide receiver range. So basically like T. Higgins, 4,900, Curtis Samuel, 4,800, Darius Slayton, 48. I think Darius Slayton's still my favorite play in this range. But if we're trying to get like a little bit weird, you're kind of in that Shenault Watkins range. I think both of those guys are totally fine. I like the idea of getting access to Watkins in a spot like this, high total. like there's going to be some ownership on this stack in tournaments. Maybe Watkins is a cheaper play that allows you to get up to some of these running back plays around it. Like that's always the problem with Watkins stat or with the stacks overall in Kansas City. They're so expensive. So like if you can find a little bit more savings there, I'm not a Sammy Watkins guy overall, but I think he's okay. 0.4 weighted opportunity. It's actually not terrible. So I think he's all right. Jesse Gerardo with a $1.99 super chat. Appreciate you, man. Jonathan Taylor or Will Fuller? I do love Will Fuller this week, but I'm going to take a closer look at this one for you. Appreciate that super chat, my friend. Oh man, this is a tough one. I think it's Taylor for me, and maybe that's a cop out because I'm almost always going to take the running back and I guess the safer volume. I think it's Jonathan Taylor, but it is close, and it's full PPR. I get that. I think this, if you're looking for ceiling, I think Will Fuller has a higher ceiling today, if that's helpful. I think it depends on who you're playing, what the rest of your roster is like, and if you're comfortable kind of taking the floor volume from Jonathan Taylor, or if you really need some upside to beat the team you're playing with Will Fuller. It's close. I think it's Jonathan Taylor, but I do love Will Fuller today. I hope that doesn't flip-flop too much. What do we got here? Opinions on wide receivers not named Fuller, Chark in high-scoring Jacksonville-Houston game. Yeah, I like Shenault quite a bit. I actually think that you can go back to Cooks also. Not like actively doing it outside of some stacks with Watson, but I literally physically cannot click Randall Cobb. It really, like, I can't do it. I wanted to like try and like rationalize that side of it, but I think there's enough people from a game theory perspective that just refuse to play Cooks after what happened last week that it would make sense for him to like realize some of those air yards this week at much lower ownership. So I think Cooks at 4,100 is totally fine. An injury to keep an eye on in this game, Jordan Aikens. It looked like he was questionable to be playing. He is out of the concussion protocol. Didn't practice the last I heard. But Darren Fells, if there's no Aikens, I think Darren Fells at 3,400 is a really interesting, cheap tight end play. He's a guy that already has a red zone role, regardless if Aikens is in this game. 3,400. So I guess if Aikens is out, like outside of Fuller, outside of Chark, I think that Fells is like an interesting way to, if you're playing these Watson stacks, just get your tight end out of the way. So I think that's a really interesting way to do it. Guys, we might hit 700 for the first time today. How awesome would that be? We have 56 people on Twitch. You guys can help us do it. Let's break 700 today. Anyone that's over on Twitch right now, we got 56 people. We got 10 people on Periscope. Join us on YouTube if you can. Let's do this. 15 more people. We got 254 likes also, guys. Appreciate you guys, everyone in the chat. We got another super chat. God, you guys are... This is not necessary, guys. Seriously. I'll try and get to your questions as we're kind of getting more people in here. I'm sorry if I've missed anyone's along the way. I'll try and get to a few more questions after we get through some of the positions, but want to make sure that I get to Joshua here. Super flex on FanDuel. 4 running backs is what I'm going with. Who would I pick? Oh, man. Easy game. If you're playing 4 running backs, there's 4 very good running back plays this week, my friend. Step into my office. Ezekiel Elliott, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Kareem Hunt, Mike Davis. I think it's a clear tier ahead of any other running back play on the slate. I really do. So if you're playing the Superflex on FanDuel, which is a very niche contest, by the way, so I can respect that, Joshua, I'm in on that. Evan Ingram versus Hayden Hurst at tight end. I do think that Evan Ingram could actually end up going under-owned in this spot. So I think Evan Ingram's a guy. If everyone's going to play Slayton, maybe Evan Ingram ends up being the guy. I could see it. I'm not really on the Flacco stack. It'll be really low owned. I can't physically do the Herndon thing any longer. I understand it. I think there's better ways to go than Flacco. You guys know me at quarterback. I'm going to always prioritize a guy that can give me a little bit of rushing equity also. Flacco doesn't make a move for me. All right. Thanks, Joshua. Appreciate you, man. What else we got here? Mr. Upload. Thanks for your subscription, bro. Thanks for being with us. What else we got here? I'm going to try and get through the positions here, actually, before we completely switch over to some Q&A. Again, if you're here for the first time, would love it if you would consider subscribing to the channel, toss a like. That helps more people find us, all that good stuff. I do have a podcast as well, so if you haven't checked out the podcast, just search The Joe Holka Show on Apple. You'll find it. The Line Movement NFL Show, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into DFS, obviously, but some sports betting stuff with Dieter Kurtenbach, Peter Overzet. That's directly after this on the Line Movement channel at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Also, the one that you really want to get to, now that we got almost 700 people in the chat, I should do one last tilt space plug here. The $5,300 entry on DraftKings, the Thunderdome. We'll be breaking this thing down live on stream on the Live Movement channel. This is my favorite show to do every single week because it's so much fun. So last week, the $1,500 tournament, we were fortunate enough to win for $50K. We're rolling it back into one of the most expensive contests on DraftKings this week. So should be a ton of fun. If you haven't checked out the Tilt Space show and you're kind of just wanting to sweat some teams, talk about what's just happened, definitely join us over there, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. So tight end. Let's do this right off the hop because I don't want to say a word about tight end until I get a pulse in the chat. Put a 1 in the chat if you're on George Kittle. Put a 2 in the chat if you're on Travis Kelce. That's all I want to know. If you're paying all the way up at tight end, is it Kittle or is it Kelce in week 5 on DraftKings? Where are we at? I'm going to let this settle a little bit. 1 in the chat for Kittle, 2 in the chat for Kelce. Let's see where we're at. Josh has such a cool intro. Yeah, shout out Nick Conklin, our creative director at Line Movement. He does such an awesome job with stuff like that, man. So good. So good. Thunderdome Day. You're right, Cody. You are right. Someone says both Kittle and Kelce. That would be interesting. Let's see where we're at here. Guys, we're so close to breaking 700 for the first time live. How cool would that be? 56 people over on Twitch. Come join us. We're about 20 away. I think we can do it. We're a little bit split right now on Travis Kelce and George Kittle. Interesting. So, without getting too deep into it, George Kittle, like we saw the absolutely insane ceiling that this guy has. Like even though Debo was in, Ayuk was in, like they're going to continue to kind of get more volume, all that sort of stuff. I guess my biggest concern with this is that Garoppolo is back. We haven't seen these massive, massive ceiling games from Kittle in comparison to his splits with Nick Mullins. So it's crazy to think that when Nick Mullins is in, Kittle might actually be a better play. I don't know. I think that the tiebreaker for me is that Kittle is like significantly cheaper than Kittle on FanDuel. On DraftKings, Kittle is a little bit more than Kelce. So if the answer is and you're playing both slates and you're trying to, or playing both sites and you're trying to get a little bit of action of both, I think you just have to pay attention to pricing. Maybe Kittle's your guy on FanDuel. Maybe Kelce is your guy on DraftKings. Kelce's kind of like that pay up to be contrarian guy almost always, right? So if we think that Kelce is going to be, let's go back to the data sheet, by the way. If we think that Kelce is going to be anywhere near the same as Kittle, then yeah, maybe it's a tougher decision. I actually disagree with this ownership projection. I think that Kelce is going to be significantly less owned on DraftKings than Kittle after what we just saw in some larger field stuff. Everyone wants, like on prime time, we see Kittle go absolutely crazy. I think that the recency bias there alone is going to have a lot of people on Kittle today. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think that Kelce overall is probably stronger on DraftKings just because I think that you can probably project a little bit more volume from this Kansas City offense overall than this San Francisco offense. So I actually am really interested in Kelce, and let's dig a little bit deeper into this. So 0.5 weighted opportunity for Kelce. That's like wide receiver-esque, guys. That's like very strong. So he's seeing some deeper targets, he's seeing a large target share, all that good stuff. Versus a guy like Kittle, 0.3 weighted opportunity, that's not as great. But the thing that's nice about Kittle is he's running deeper routes. So his yards per route run, 3.0, that's very good for a tight end. You'll see some of these freak athletes up here, like you'll see Jonnu Smith, Malawi Cox, Higbee, Kelce, Darren Waller, those type of guys at that metric. So that's interesting. I think I prefer Kelce this week, but it is very close. It is very, very close. I like both of them quite a bit. Darren Waller as a bring back in KC, I prefer the Ruggs bring back for a little bit cheaper, but getting rid of this tight end position that's kind of a dumpster fire outside the top tier, I don't think that there's anything wrong with Darren Waller in this spot. A guy that I think is interesting today is Zach Ertz at 5,700, 6,500 on FanDuel. I think he's really interesting in this spot. Let me tell you why. So Pittsburgh's a team that we know is going to absolutely bring the house. Like they're going to pressure. Philly's got so many injuries on the offensive line. That's kind of why everyone wants to talk about the Pittsburgh defense being like a really strong pay up play. If you have the salary for it, there's going to be a ton of pressure. But if there's a ton of pressure on Wentz, who is he going to go to beside his like most like, I guess, consistent, his favorite weapon, like when he's in trouble? I think it's Zach Ertz. At 5,700, he's a guy that like maybe he's just not going to do a ton with his volume overall. He gives us basically nothing after the catch, which is unfortunate. Like he's nowhere near the type of ceiling Kittle, Kelce, Andrews, Waller with the ball in his hands. But I think the volume, he puts him at a really nice price point today overall, in my opinion. So I do have some interest in Zach Ertz. He's not my favorite play overall. I think tight end is a little bit gross, a little bit cheaper. I think Eric Ebron at 4K. I know BSB came in here earlier and talked about how he liked the Pittsburgh stack. I don't know if I'm fully there on that, but I think Ebron at 4K is really interesting. Like getting a real tight end for 4K, nice team total. We know that really matters at the tight end position where we're really trying to, I guess, focus on touchdowns overall. So 4K for Eric Ebron, I think, is still a really nice price point for him. If we're looking past that, Evan Ingram at 4,600, if you have the salary, I think that the usage overall is still really solid. If everyone's just going to play Slayton today, you can take care of the tight end position with Evan Ingram. I still think he's a really strong athlete overall, and we really want to focus on that at wide receiver and tight end, in my opinion. So if you're really trying to, if you don't have the salary for someone like Zach Ertz or this top tier, I think you can kind of live in the mid-range with Eric Ebron or with Evan Ingram. If you did want to get cheaper, there are some options. It's not pretty. I actually think that it's interesting if you're trying to play some Deshaun Watson stacks, though. We mentioned this earlier. If Aikens is out, I think that Fells he becomes more interesting to me. If we're really trying to pay down, though, and you want to live in that Herndon, Thomas range, 3,200 for Chris Herndon, the Jets, low total. Logan Thomas, 3,500 for Washington. Obviously, if you're rolling out some Kyle Allen stacks today, maybe you just play the cheapest stack possible. You play Logan Thomas with him, a guy that just hasn't really seen a lot of catchable balls overall this year. So I think they're both okay. I'm not actively going down there trying to play those guys. Trey Burton at 2,900 is the cheapest I would go today. I think it's thin, personally. But those are the guys for me. Dalton Schultz at 4,800. I think I still prefer Evan Ingram. More of a condensed target share there. Mark Andrews at 62. Does Mark Andrews end up being like sub 5% today? If that's the case, I'm always interested in some Mark Andrews. I think he's really interesting. We have him at 6% right now in terms of his ownership, but nice total. If this Baltimore game ends up going crazy and people talk themselves out of it, maybe Mark Andrews, especially if we get a little bit of weather there. If anyone's checking out weather right now, is there anything that we can kind of, I guess, find on Twitter or whatever it is? Like, is there wind plus 10 mile per hour, 12 mile per hour? That's when I start paying a little bit more attention. I know there's some games that have some weather concerns. I don't care about rain, but wind is something I definitely care about for sure. Anthony Filia. What's up, man? He's been talking to us on Twitch. Sorry I missed your chats, man. We're over here on YouTube here. Couple Ingram people in the chat. Nice. How about David Njoku? Probably not for me, man. Probably not for me. CeeDee Lamb or Robert Woods. I like the Robert Woods bring back if you're playing some of those stacks, but I think it's probably still Lamb for me. Lamar, Hollywood, and Andrew stack. Yeah, I like it quite a bit. Nothing over 12 mile per hour. Thanks, PSU Dad. Appreciate that, man. Yeah, so maybe we're not worrying about it a ton. Rain in Washington, maybe improve Ramsey. Maybe. Ramsey's already a good play. They pressure a ton. Washington can't protect a ton. Oh, it's franchise. What's up, Anthony? How's it going, man? I'm slowly starting to, I guess, get used to the names over on Twitch, moving over to YouTube. Thanks for moving over here, man. Appreciate it. We still have 46 people over there. I still think we can hit 700 today. Maybe today's the day. So let's talk about defense for a second, and then we'll get to some more Q&A stuff with you guys. What we're really looking for at defense overall is we want these guys that are going to be seeing volume on the other side. And what that means is there's going to be pass attempts on the other side. So there's a few ways to achieve that. Yeah, just a quarterback that we know is going to throw the ball a lot because they throw the ball a lot on that offense, or a team that's behind and they're trying to catch up a little bit. That's the perfect scenario. I guess the more perfect scenario is if we get pressure on these quarterbacks, because we know that quarterback, it's so important to just be really efficient overall with what they're doing. So what limits efficiency the most is when a quarterback is seeing a ton of pressure. So I think that's what we really want to focus on overall. So some of the guys that I think could be just under siege today based on what the defensive line on the other side does with pressure, or basically what the offensive line in front of them is doing. We talked about Wentz, but Wentz is going to be in some deep trouble today against Pittsburgh. So if you can afford to pay up for Pittsburgh today, I think that is totally fine. 3,800 on DraftKings, 44 on FanDuel. I think they're going to be one of the highest owned defenses because people see how good of a spot this is. But someone in the chat mentioned the Rams. I think the Rams are really interesting against Washington today as like a kind of a pivot off of, like, you'll probably get the Rams at half the ownership as the Steelers. So I think that's okay. Against Washington, Kyle Allen, that sort of thing, I think is good. 49ers against Dolphins, I think is okay in the mid-range. I don't love the passing volume overall in that game, but it could be decent. Ravens defense against the Bengals, I think, is interesting from an offensive line, defensive line perspective. But if we're paying all the way down, who do we like cheaper than, let's say cheaper than 3K on DraftKings? Who you guys got in the chat? King says he likes Texans D. I like the Texans D. That's on my list. That's on my list for sure. Texans are a team that will pressure. Minshew is one of those guys that will come back and make mistakes. I have some concerns with pace in that game. But I think they're interesting. I think the cheapest I've gone so far is Carolina at 2,400. Carolina's actually been kind of underrated in terms of like how much they've been pressuring. Their D-line's played pretty well. And we talked about like the perfect storm. I don't know if there's a true perfect storm outside of Pittsburgh against Wentz, but the spot against Atlanta for the Carolina defense, we know that Matt Ryan's going to sling it. So there should be volume on that side of it. So I like that quite a bit. Bunch of people in the chat talking about Browns. Colts missing key offensive line pieces. And we know the Browns will bring the heat. The Browns are on my list. They're kind of in a weird price point. Browns are currently at 2,700. So I guess that I asked the question, under 3K. Yeah, I think the Browns are strong, man. That's sharp. You guys are too sharp in the chat. I like that one a lot. Bengals just need turnovers. Yeah, the Bengals don't pressure a ton. We played the Bengals a little bit last week. We had them on our team where we won 50K for the tilt space, so it's hard to be too upset with them. I wish they pressured a little bit more, but I wouldn't be shocked if I ended up with at least one Bengals team. They're 3,100 on FanDuel. Makes a lot work. 2,300 on DraftKings. They just run the ball so much, either with Lamar or elsewhere. I don't know if that's the best one to go to, but it's kind of like there isn't like a slam dunk down there this week, in my opinion. All right, we made it through all the positions, guys. Just want to remind everyone that I will be going live directly after this on the Live Movement YouTube channel to walk through the slate with Dieter and with Peter Overzet. Dieter and Peter. And then Tilt Spaces tonight at 6:30 p.m. If you're here for the first time, do us a huge favor. Toss a like on this video. Guys, we almost have half the people in the chat dropping a like on this video. Really appreciate that. Helps more people find us, all that good stuff. Hit that bell. I went live 10 minutes early today. The only people that know that are the ones that hit that bell because they got a notification on their phone. Hey, Joe's live. So I'm going to start doing that randomly. Hang out with some of you guys in the Noti gang. Good stuff. Yeah, consider subscribing if you haven't already. Check out the podcast, all of that good stuff. Let's talk through some of your guys' questions. So now we have a little bit more time to kind of work through some direct questions from you guys. I always want to leave at least 10, 15 minutes to walk through some questions. Do me a favor, though. If you're asking something in the chat, throw an @ Joe Holka. Helps me see it a little bit better. Chat gets flowing. Sometimes it's tough. Let's do one more poll before we do the chat, or before we do the Q&A. One of the things that I'm most interested in today is stacks. So let's do a temperature check on some stacks today. So put a 1 in the chat if you like the Dallas stack today. Put a 2 in the chat if you like the Houston Texans stack today, I should say. What other ones? Put a 3 in the chat if you like the Carolina stack today. And then we'll go 4 in the chat if you like anything else. Let me know. Put a 4 and then something else. So we'll go Dallas stack for a 1, Houston stack for 2, Carolina stack for 3. I think those are some of the more popular ones today. Unless we start getting just flooded with Kansas City stacks, which maybe got a little bit more popular. Earlier in the week when I made the stacks video, I thought that Kansas City might be a little bit sneaky, but maybe it's not anymore. What we got? Couple 2s in the chat. Okay. People like this Houston stack, I think. We got DP on the Carolina stack. Interesting. We got some KC people. Understandable. Arizona stack. I like that one. I like that one quite a bit. Danny Dimes. Okay. Minshew, Shenault, Robinson. James, that one could be low owned. Steelers stack. That one I think will be low owned also. We got some contrarian people in the chat today. Interesting. All right. We always got to get a pulse before we kind of wrap things. I'm going to try and get to some of these questions. Dearness Johnson from the Browns. I'm not super interested in that one, man. Where is DJ Moore on this chart? I'm not sure exactly which chart we're looking at, but I do love DJ Moore today for sure. DJ Moore versus Robbie Anderson is like the question everyone's asking. I think that in tournaments, maybe you just play the lower owned one. I do like Robbie if I had to pick one, though. I like the usage for him for sure. Def Chicks says, why are you awesome, bro? I'm not sure if that's a bot, but if it's not a bot, appreciate you. I'm not sure how awesome I am, but I do my best to help you guys out where I can. Let's talk Waller versus Ruggs. Yeah, I think that Ruggs is the clear bring back just because he's cheaper and these stacks are really expensive. If like you're fading one of Kelsey and Tyreek and you can get to Waller, that makes sense. I think getting rid of the tight end position with a play you actually feel good about should almost always be a priority. So I think that's interesting. Shane says Hunt or Davis. I love both of those guys. I will have teams that definitely have both of those guys. If I had to pick one, I think the higher equity play, probably Davis. I love Hunt as a tournament play. Waller versus Gurley in flex. I like Waller better, but I'm not actively trying to play a tight end in the flex usually. But I think in that scenario, Waller for me. What else we got here? Oh, that's the winner today, Kevin says. We got to scroll up and find D-Mill. What did D-Mill say? Oh, Big Ben. A couple of sharp people talking about Big Ben in the chat today. I don't know if I'm completely there on that one. I don't think Wentz is going to be able to score a ton of points on the other side, personally. Who's my number one fade this week? Steven, that is a question and a half, man. Let me look at ownership here. So my number one fade today. I think my fade is probably just this Dallas passing game, if that ends up being super popular. Is that a good enough answer? I'll say this. Slayton, I think, is a really good play. In 3-max situations, single entry, if he's going to be 25% owned, I think Slayton makes a really nice fade. I do. Those are the type of guys we like to play at sub 10% ownership usually. Good question, though. I love that question, Steven. Hunt and Jets or DJ and Houston? Hunt and Jets for me. Not even close. What else we got here? Can you play Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Kelsey in the same lineup with playing Mahomes? I think you can, Andrew. Yeah, I'll have some Clyde Edwards-Helaire with my Mahomes stacks. I think he's active enough in the passing game. I do. One full game stack. I think the full game stack is Carolina and Atlanta because I don't really want to play any of these quarterbacks in Carolina. I think Bridgewater's fine because of his price and the weapons. But I think the way to get different with Carolina is to overstack it, like onslaught scenario. Maybe bring it back with Kelvin Ridley. Maybe bring it back with Olamide. I think that's kind of how I would approach that game. If I'm playing the Carolina and Atlanta stack, unless I'm getting really different at some of my one-offs or defense, something like that, I think I'm overstacking it. Good question, though. We did have a super chat in here. A couple of them, actually. You guys are best. Gershon Aguilar. I hope I said your name right, man. Thank you for that $10 super chat. Very generous of you. Do you think Olamide Zacchaeus is the cheat code pay up for the top 5 running back we like this week? I love him, man. I think I definitely, I talked about this before, but I think that he is the 3K play you want versus Jeff Smith. If you're really trying to leverage ownership, I get it, but I don't think Jeff Smith has a ton of upside overall. I definitely prefer Zacchaeus to Chris Hogan. I'm not going to Chris Hogan. There's a couple guys that are just like super cheap, like Isaiah Ford's 3,500, I think makes some sense still. Yeah, I think that he's like, he unlocks so much. And I think that it's possible that we kind of fell into this trap at tight end last week with Troutman. But I think that Zacchaeus at 3K, we just don't get roles like this, especially, I mean, obviously if Julio's out. A guy had 53 of 70 snaps last week and 9 targets, and he's 3K this week in a fantastic game environment. Yeah, he's a really solid play, man. I think that if you wanted to call him the cheat code, I'm totally fine with that. Update, though. Def Chicks in the chat is not a bot. Awesome, man. Appreciate you. Week 2. Thanks for subscribing, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, if anyone's here for the first time, would love it if you consider subscribing. We do this every Monday and Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, also at 9:30 a.m. on Sunday. So welcome to the community, man. What else we got here? Concerns with McLaurin facing Ramsey today. I don't care a ton about wide receiver cornerback stuff. I think a bigger concern for McLaurin is always his quarterback play in front of him, right? I think McLaurin's okay, though. I wish he was a little bit cheaper. But 6,100 for him in tournaments if he's like 5% owned or so. I think it's totally fine. What do we got here? Baltimore stack, everyone's scared off the weather. That could be sharp. I think people overreact to weather, 100%. We care about wind, guys. We don't care about rain tons. Yeah, if we think that Baltimore is going to be like drastically lower owned because of the rain that's happening over there, I love that call, man. I love it. Who you on, Hollywood versus Andrews? I think Andrews if I'm picking one, but I do like Hollywood as kind of like a buy low. He's going to break the slate at some point. I don't know if it's this week, but I'm a big Hollywood guy. Any thoughts on said Wilson? Not really on my radar, Ann. Not for DFS. Lamb or Robert Woods? I like Robert Woods if it's a bring back on some like contrarian type of Kyle Allen stack. I don't think that I'm actively trying to play a Rams pass catcher, so probably CD Lamb for me. Matthew Hancock stacking Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins. So you're playing that 16 game slate. Love it. I love the Minnesota game if you're playing that slate for sure. Favorite wide receiver 3,500 and down besides Zacchaeus? Okay, that's an interesting question. Let's take a peek here. It's probably going to be Jeff Smith just because of the spot against Arizona. And I think 9 targets last week. It's probably Zach Smith. I think that like the ceiling of him is not super high, but the floor is decent for 3K. So Jeff Smith, my second guy under 3,500 probably. What's your gut feeling of the day and what player are you fading today? My gut feeling today is that the Dallas passing game, it's not over by any means, but I don't know if a full Dak stack wins a GPP today, unless Danny Dimes goes absolutely bonkers on the other side, which could happen, but I'm not betting on that. Boyd, Juju, DJ Moore, Slayton. Are you asking me to pick one there, Jeremiah? Oh, need two. DJ Moore and Slayton, I think. Yep, I think those are the ones for me. I think Juju's interesting. Juju and Boyd are probably the safer ones, but I'm always going for ceiling. You guys know me. How does DJ Chark fare this week? I like DJ Chark a lot. Like if we're playing those stacks, like if you have some stacks out there with Watson, I think Chark is the clear bringback. Chark is the clear bringback. Hunt, Davis, CEH can only play 2 in a GPP. Who am I going with? In a GPP, if it's a large field, I think it's Hunt and probably Davis. Small field, it's probably CEH and Davis. Fuller in cash. He seems kind of expensive to me, but I do love Fuller today, Mike. How do I feel about Kenyon Drake? Is this the week Kenyon Drake buries me? I don't have any Kenyon Drake right now on the lineups I built so far. Full transparency. But maybe I jumped off the train 1 week too early. I wouldn't be shocked. Thoughts on Miles Sanders and Terry McLaurin? We talked a little bit about Terry McLaurin, Anthony. Miles Sanders, I think, is an interesting price pivot. So we'll turn, I guess, the question and the Q&A into a little bit of some leverage conversations here. So if we're just looking purely at touches and some guys that are lower owned, James Conner, 6% at 6,900 for a guy that should touch the ball 20 times. I think that's super interesting. Miles Sanders, 6,500, a guy that could approach 20 touches. Maybe Miles Sanders gets a ton of dump offs today because Pittsburgh's pressuring so much. I could see that happening for sure. Joe Mixon, is everyone just not going to play Joe Mixon after last week? Like this James Conner, Joe Mixon, Sanders, Robinson range in GPPs, I have some interest there. I do. I think I prefer some of those guys versus Josh Jacobs, but I understand the Josh Jacobs play. I just rarely play Josh Jacobs. I think that's more of a mental thing. Good question, though. Antonio Gibson and DK Cash at 5K. I like Gibson a bit. That's one that we've talked about a little bit with the tilt space to leverage a bit. 4% for a guy at 5K. That should touch the ball about 16 times, hopefully a little bit more. I think it's okay. He's like drastically cheaper than some of these other guys, right? So it's going to lead you to a different type of roster construction overall, which I think is super positive this week, especially at running back where it's pretty clear. Sanders legit pivot or Galaxy Brain? It's definitely Galaxy Brain. But I think it's a reasonable pivot if you want to get away from these running back plays, which I'm not. I mean, you're a better man than I am if you're actively trying to get away from some of those plays. I think they're really strong. Are you opposed to fading both Zeke and CEH today because of high ownership? I'm not opposed to fading anyone, Steven. I don't care. I'll build some teams without Zeke for sure. CEH, like if CEH is going to be 30% owned, yeah, I think there's, like we've talked about all the plays. There's a lot of really good running backs this week. Is Minshew a play? Not for me this week, Justin. Not in DFS. I will be underweight that scenario. Gibson goes 4 to 5x easily versus LA Rams, I think. Yeah, that was a shout out friend of the show, Ian Hardis. That was his helicopter play today. So all the helicopter narratives. So let's talk through a couple other leverage plays. Like this is a week where late swap I don't think is going to be as important, is not the word, as useful because I think some of the chalkiest games will be earlier. Basically, if you have some Dallas stacks going and you're trying to get a little bit different, some of the guys I think you can use to leverage in the later game. Odell Beckham at 6,400, someone we didn't really talk about a ton, but still popping in a lot of the metrics I think really matter. So I think he's interesting at 6,400 as a pivot. I think he'll be pretty low owned. I think Amari Cooper, if you are playing this Dallas game, I don't think a lot of people are going to spend up for Amari Cooper, so maybe he offers a little bit of leverage. I think that overall, like the stacks with Cleveland, like the Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry to leverage a little bit of the Kareem Hunt people, I think makes some sense. Those would be like the wide receiver pivots. If you wanted to get really weird, say that you have some teams that have Zeke in them, maybe you pivot to Jonathan Taylor at 6,200 at much lower ownership if you're behind. We're talking about teams that are way behind. Like you got to literally, if you have Zeke on your team or you have some of these guys that are super high, if you have Slayton and your team's really struggling, do not stay on Slayton at 25% ownership. Give yourself a chance to pass teams if things go wrong. You know what I mean? That's it only takes once for like a late swap to actually work for you guys to like truly understand it. It's like one of the biggest edges left in DFS still. So I like Jonathan Taylor a bit as a pivot. I like Odell Beckham as a pivot. Maybe T.Y. Hilton as a pivot. This Indy-Cleveland game overall, I think is where all the leverage is in the afternoon. I think that's where I would be. Maybe I'd love to say like if you have someone like Kittle coming, maybe you make a pivot to like Michael Gesicki. Maybe it's Evan Ingram. I think I prefer Evan Ingram actually. Evan Ingram would be like the tight end pivot. If he ends up like around 15% owned, maybe I take that back. But yeah, getting off of George Kittle is something I'd be actively trying to do as well if I was behind. All right, guys, final questions here. And then going to move directly over to the Line Movement show. I think we covered a lot today, guys. We got on a little bit early for those people that hit the notification bell, which is great. 335 likes might be a new record, actually, for a live stream. So appreciate everyone that's been here. Consider subscribing to the channel. I ask one thing of you guys, because I know a lot of you guys will be over on the Live Movement show in about 15 minutes. When you come into the chat, I want you to say, "We are back," so that I know that you came from this show. That's what I want. That's all I ask. Come into the chat. We are back. I'm going to grab the direct link, actually. I know there should be an event link up here. So I'm going to get that for you guys before we get out of here. Fun week, though, guys. This has been a really fun one overall. This slate is a little bit scary. Normally, we have some wide receivers that I feel a little bit more conviction for. My like strongest conviction right now is that the running back plays are really strong that we talked about. So this that I'm dropping in the chat right there, that is the event to the Line Movement show. Myself, Dieter Kurtenbach, and Peter Overzet will be getting rolling over there. And yeah, that's it, guys. Mondays and Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern time, we'll be going through all of this. And also, I got to get one more plug in here. The Tilt Space tonight, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Obviously, we're playing the Thunderdome on DraftKings, a $5,300 entry. Should be a ton of fun. We got to roll this thing back, right? We just had a big win last week with the Tilt Space boys, myself, Overzet, Leone. 50K, great win, but obviously we're just going to try and give some of it back, right? It's for the content. We had people in the chat chanting Dome, which was super fun. So we'll get there, guys. I'll see you guys over on the Line Movement show shortly, and hopefully Tilt Space later on, all right? Talk to you guys later.